It's that time of year again. The season is shifting, the weather is warming up, and you know what that means. Panic sewing a new wardrobe. Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Casey and I love to sew. Making time for sewing has been a bit of a challenge for me lately because we've had so many big projects around our house. Like lately I've been working outside. The weather has been absolutely gorgeous. I have loved pretty much every minute of it, but my body needs a little bit of a break. So this weekend, I decided to set aside a block of time for some sewing therapy. So I'm always kind of thinking a little bit ahead with my sewing projects, and I'm always trying to think of ways that I can make my sewing process a little bit more efficient. Even if I'm not ready to sew with my fabrics yet, I get them prepped so that when the time is right, the fabric is good to go. And pre-washing your fabrics is something I preach about here. I think it is one of the most important steps when you are starting a sewing project. It ensures that the fabric is pre-shrunk so that there's not any additional shrinkage after you finish the garment and wash it. And that brings me conveniently to the sponsor of today's video, Blueland. Lately, I've been using Blueland's laundry tablets and I love how minimal their packaging is. You know what else I love? How easy and mess-free they are to use. Just toss a tablet into the drum and that's it. No weird coatings, no heavy fragrances, and definitely no plastic film, which in fact does not dissolve. That stuff ends up as microplastics in our water. Blueland's tablets are totally free of single-use plastic, come in compostable packaging, and are made without phosphates, ammonia, VOCs, or other harsh ingredients. And everything's vegan, non-GMO, and hypoallergenic. I've also been using their hand soap, which comes in refill tablet form too. You just add a little water to one of their reusable bottles and it dissolves into a full bottle of luxuriously foaming hand soap. It's a small change, but one that cuts out more single-use plastic from my routine. Another thing I love about Blueland's refills is how little space they take up. It's been such an easy switch, and it's one less awkwardly shaped plastic container to knock over under the sink. If you've been wanting to cut down on plastic waste or just try something different, this is a really easy place to start. You can click the link below or scan this QR code to get 15% off your first kit from Blueland. You don't have to have a subscription, but you can set one up to have the refill sent automatically. Again, so easy. A big thank you to Blueland for sponsoring today's video. Okay, let's get back to it. With my fabrics already washed, my next step was to batch cut the projects. Batch cutting is a crucial step for me when I have several projects that I know I want to sew, because the last thing I want to do after I finish one sewing project is clean my workspace and shift gears to cutting fabric again. So I got up early on Saturday morning and turned on some Dateline and cut my fabric. Side note, I just realized that there is a 24-hour feed of Dateline on the Peacock channel. So I've been watching a lot of Dateline lately. I probably need to watch something else actually. This first fabric is a super lightweight cotton rayon, I think, paisley denim I picked up at Joann during their going out of business sale. I really waffled back and forth about whether to make a dress or a skirt or pants out of this and decided that pants would be the most practical and easy to wear for me. Next up was this gorgeous block printed cotton that I purchased from Blackbird Fabrics forever ago. Again, I wasn't sure what I wanted to make out of this because I love it so much and I didn't want to mess it up, but I decided to make a blouse using the McCall's 7969 dress pattern. Last fabric was this super cute eyelet fabric that I have had in my stash for I don't even know how long. Again, I was really struggling to decide on a project for this one until I saw an eyelet shell on the Cezanne website. I thought this would be a perfect fit in my summer wardrobe. All of the projects I picked are things I have made before, taking some of the guesswork out of fitting and the construction process, which would allow me to hit the ground running. The first project I tackled was the Eyelet Shell. I decided to use the same pattern hack I used to create this breakaway vest a few weeks ago with a few small modifications. The only changes I made for this version were to shorten the bodice slightly and finish the neckline and armholes with a bias binding instead of a facing or a lining. I thought this would be super cute with jeans or a skirt or wide leg pants, just something easy to throw on and style with my existing wardrobe while feeling a little special. This blouse came together so quickly because it's just 2 pattern pieces, and really 4 pieces total if you count the 2 pieces for the back and the 2 pieces for the front. The most complicated part of this entire construction process was just adding the bias binding, and I've learned a lot about doing bias bindings. I have a video here and a blog post on this that goes into detail for my tips and tricks for getting a really flawless finish with your bias binding, and I was really proud with how the finish turned out on this. I needed to install buttons next on this blouse, and I wasn't quite sure what type of buttons I wanted to put on here, so I kind of slept on it, and then the next day I came back, sewed my buttonholes, and added the buttons. And to cut my buttonholes open, I always use a little chisel. This is actually for cutting open buttonholes, and it works beautifully. And to place my buttons, I use Scotch tape. This is my go-to trick for keeping the buttons in place while I sew them on, and the needle goes right through the tape, and then you can just peel the tape off when you're done. I ended up going with the same tortoiseshell looking buttons that I put on literally everything. I feel like they just work so well for almost every single garment. So I considered switching it up on this one, but just went back to my tried and true. For the pants, I'll be using my go-to self-drafted elastic waist pants pattern. I have a video on how I drafted this one here on the channel, but a very similar pattern is the McCall's 8221 shorts pattern lengthened into pants. These are some of the easiest pants I've ever made, and they are also so easy and comfy to wear. I've made several pairs of these. I also recently made a pair with cargo pockets, which are fun. A pattern like this is a great canvas for small modifications. You can do inseam or patch pockets. I'm doing inseam pockets on these. Widen or narrow the leg shape for a slightly different silhouette. Raise or lower the rise. It's just a great, easy base pattern to practice pattern hacks on because it comes together so quickly and it's kind of hard to mess up. Now this fabric is a little bit slinky because it is such a lightweight drapey fabric, which could be a little challenging to work with, but the entire time that I was making these pants, I was just thinking of how much I was going to enjoy wearing these this summer. They hang so well, and I know they're just gonna make a really beautiful pair of pants. So I made these pants. I haven't added the elastic yet, obviously, but they're a little too tight in the hips. I can get them on, but I can just tell that once I get the elastic in, you can kind of see like right here, they're just not hanging straight down because they're just a little bit tight across here. And when I drafted this pattern, I discovered this because the first pair of pants that I made with this pattern, they weren't super tight, but they were just like, they didn't have the drape that I wanted. So I knew that I needed to add a little bit of ease, but I kind of forgot that when I was reusing this pattern. I need to put a note on the pattern. So I've already got the pockets in here, and I can't just like let out the seams, the side seams or the inseam, because for one thing, I've got these inseam pockets on the side seams, and then the inseam I've already trimmed with the serger. So what I think I'm gonna do, and this is a trick that I've done many times when I make things that are too small, I'm gonna add a little racing stripe down the side seam on both sides, which means I'm gonna have to redo the pockets, which is not a huge deal. And these pants are a pretty quick sew. Like, I put all of this together in about probably less than an hour yesterday. So I decided to sleep on it yesterday and not work on them anymore because I was very frustrated that I did that. I'm basically gonna trim off the side seam, including the side seam pockets. Then I'm gonna add a strip of fabric down the side that is about 2 inches wide. That includes the seam allowance. I'm gonna do a really narrow seam allowance just to conserve fabric. And I'll also add the pockets back in on the front side of that little racing stripe. You may not even be able to tell that I have a racing stripe just because these pants are patterned, but I also think it could kind of look like a feature and not a flaw. That's kind of my approach whenever I do make mistakes in my sewing. I try to fix it and make it look intentional, even though it really wasn't. My favorite method for installing a waistband is to attach the elastic to the top edge of the pants at the waist and then fold it down and stitch it down. This is such a clean way to finish, and it really reduces a lot of the bulk. I did go back through and stitch several rows of stitching around the perimeter of the waistband just to kind of make it look a little bit cleaner. And then the last step was hemming. If it hadn't been for my little sizing mistake, this would have come together in probably less than 2 hours. This is a great pattern. The last project I worked on is the McCall's blouse. So I've made this McCall's 7969 pattern as a blouse before and loved it. And I thought this fabric would be perfect for it. This pattern was kind of a darling in the online sewing community a few years ago, and for good reason. It is such a beautiful silhouette while also being one of the most comfortable things I've ever made. I always get compliments when I wear this blouse, which I'm actually wearing right now while I make this. The only problem with the first one I made is that it is way too big on me, and I've had to make modifications on the fly to make it fit better. It comes in 2 size ranges, and I accidentally purchased the wrong size the first time around, so I bought the pattern again so I could make it right. So looking forward to wearing this fabric out in public. It has been hiding in my stash for way too long. It's just absolutely beautiful. All of the fabrics in the block print collection at Blackbird Fabrics are just stunning, and I have bought this fabric and the one that you can see on my mannequin in the background. And they do periodic drops of new patterns in this collection. Every single time I see more that I want to purchase, but I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to buy any more until I actually used the ones that I had. So you may be seeing more of these block prints in future videos. Now this pattern does come as a dress, and this part that I'm adding here is the skirt portion. I just made mine 9 inches tall instead of the full length dress skirt length that they have in the pattern. One thing that I have been doing just recently is using spray starch when I'm pressing, especially for hems. It is such a game changer. I don't know why I didn't think to use this before, but it has been making this process so easy for me, and I just love the crisp finish of a starched fold. It is so nice. I'm going to be using elastic in the armhole, like the sleeve openings, and I'm really limited on my elastic, so I'm actually going to use some swimsuit elastic to gather the ends of the sleeves. This little tool here, I got this with a drawstring kit, and it just kind of grabs on to the end of something when you are pushing it through casing for like elastic or a drawstring. It is actually very, very handy. Now, one last project that I decided to sneak in was hemming these pants. These are a pair of Levi's that I bought, and I kind of want them to be a little bit cropped. They're actually a little too long right now. In order to keep that original weathered hem of the jeans, I just fold up a cuff at the bottom of the jeans, stitch around the circumference of the leg opening right along the side of that hem, and then flip that folded part back into the jeans and press it really good, and then tack it in place at the side seam with a little stitch in the ditch. You could trim these if you wanted to, but I like to leave the length on just in case I decide later that I want to make them long again. And because I'm a tall girl, I always buy my jeans extra long if I can, and then hem them to the perfect length.